Well, so you compared it to Universal Express Pass, which there are two tiers of Express Pass. There's the basic, which is like this one, like Disney's in the rules, that you can only use it once at each attraction. The big benefit is you don't have to make reservations, so you can go whenever you want, but it's only once at each attraction that offers a lightning lane. And then Universal has another tier called Unlimited. The problem I see is that Disney's is priced like Unlimited,
Right.
but functions as the basic.
That is Becky Gandillon talking about the new Lightning Lane Premier Pass. And you're listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast. Hey there, thanks for joining me here on episode 245 of the Tomorrow Society podcast. I'm your host, Dan Heaton, and we are just 5 episodes before the final episode of the Tomorrow Society podcast, in case you missed that announcement at the end of the last show with Skipper Ben. But we don't need to talk about that right now. I am excited to once again be talking with Becky Gandillon of Touring Plans, and now the co-author of the Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World 2025. We talk about how Disney keeps changing things with their line skipping system, including with the new Premier Pass that you heard about in the intro. We also talk about everything with the Lightning Lane multi-pass system, the best moves there, what Becky thinks of the new system, Disney dining plan, and if there's even a way to maximize that anymore. So many cool strategies for how to navigate the parks. Becky really dives into the data and what it means, which Touring Plans does so well. And I really love her approach to the parks and how to navigate them, which works perfectly with the Unofficial Guide and everything they do there. So let's get right to it. Here is Becky Gandillon. I'm thrilled to be talking once again with Becky Gandillon, who has now added co-author of the Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World to her resume, along with her other awesome work at Touring Plans. Becky, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You're one of the few people that gets my last name right, so I will always come back.
Well, yes, I studied. I had my big study was I looked back to the last episode we did, and I hope that was right. That was my studying that I did. Well, we have a lot to talk about because, I'm sure with writing a book, Disney just can't not change Disney, not even Disney Genie Plus. I called their own name, Lightning Lane service. So I'm curious up front, you're involved with this book, and I did see, when I was looking at it, there was a little update already for Multipass, and then they just announced the new thing. But how challenging has it been overall just to keep up with Disney's constant need to tinker with this?
So challenging, right? I do Instagram a lot. That's real time. Easy, right? Disney announced something, I can go do stories on it and explain it to people same day. Blogging, also pretty easy. Longer form takes a little bit. I knew the book was going to be a challenge. So for anyone listening to this, the book got published almost 2 months ago now. It was mid-August, and that's the 2025 edition. I have already started the edits on the 2026 edition, and here we are in October 2024, right? And so my edits are supposed to be finalized by late February, early March, and the book goes to print in late April. And so the book went to print, the 2025 book went to print in April 2024, and Lightning Lane got announced in June, July of 2024. And at that point, there's no changing it, right? And so 200 pages of the book were immediately out of date before it got published. And this is just a thing that is going to happen because Disney will always do things like that. So we made a digital companion that's a whole new chapter about Lightning Lane. And now that I'm doing the 2026 book, it'll all be updated with all the data and strategies. But it's just something you got to learn to roll with. I think of the book and other digital pieces, whether it's blog or the touring plans website or Instagram, like they're companions. They go together. The book is really good for like in-depth information, being able to carry it around with you, a reference. It's not good at being 100% up to date all the time, and it never will be. So you need that balance of knowing where to look for what.
Oh, sure. And luckily, I mean, the internet is really great about that. But even so, you have to be careful because things can get changed even then. You look at a blog
Right.
post like, oh, that was written 3 weeks ago. I'm good. No, you're not,
No,
Dan. You're not
already
good
out of
anymore.
date.
Well, let's talk about some of the updates. I know one of the big updates was the change, which I think is mostly welcomed, the Lightning Lane multi-pass and single pass, aka sort of like Fast Pass Plus, but shorter time frames, kind of built on Genie Plus, but a bit different. But I'm curious up front. I know you've already been tracking the data, like you mentioned with Instagram and stuff, kind of going through it. How much have we seen, or how much are you seeing that this advanced booking now, which is 7 days for on-site length of stay and then 3 days for off-site, to simplify it? I know there's little variations.
There's nuance.
Yeah, there's nuances, but we'd be here all day. But how has that changed, do you think? I mean, it's such a big question. You could probably do an hour on this, but how has it changed how things are going with the parks, or how people are approaching their Lightning Lane reservation?
Yeah, I think there's two main differences, right? Again, yes, we could talk about it all day. Two main differences. It has made FOMO, fear of missing out, a very real thing. So before Lightning Lane single pass, that's a good way to look at it. When the era of individual Lightning Lane, when you could only book it same day anyway, even rides like Tron, Cosmic Rewind, they weren't selling out same day. And if they weren't selling out until late in the afternoon. All we did is let people book in it in advance. Prices didn't change, rules didn't change for those. And suddenly those are booking up before the day even starts. And so there is this very real psychological fear of, I have to book it now in advance because I can, otherwise I won't get to. And so this was very clever on Disney's part, because people are buying these single passes that weren't ever buying the individual Lightning Lanes. So it's net new revenue for Disney. And you can see the same thing in multi-pass. It's just people being afraid that it's going to sell out and they're going to need it. And so they're just going to buy it anyway. And then they'll use it instead of making that decision on the same day. They're locking people into these decisions early. I think the second thing is availability is much worse than it was in Genie Plus. This was very obvious in the first week or two. Things were booking up. Even Mad Tea Party was booking up 2 hours into the day, right? All these things that don't make sense. Now, it's not as bad as it was, but it's still not as good as it was in Genie Plus either. Part of that is more people are using it because they've purchased it in advance, so they're just going to use it. Another part is, and now that they've announced Lightning Lane Premier Pass, I think this was intentional on Disney's part. I just don't think they're not releasing the same number of reservations to multi-pass as they were to Genie Plus. And so there's just lower capacity in the Lightning Lane. And so things are booking up faster. So it makes that ability to make the best use of your advanced selections and then be able to have a strategy for picking up new ones much more important than it was in Genie Plus.
That's so interesting about the individual one, because when I went in 2022, when it was kind of new, I thought the individual ones, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to, but now, like this past trip that I took in March, also with virtual queue, I was like, well, we'll go for the virtual queue. And if we don't get it, we'll buy the individual one.
Right.
I wasn't that stressed. I was like, oh, whatever, what we're going to buy.
It's
we're
there if you need
Tron, regardless, and Guardians, And I know Tron's a bit different now with Standby, but I did want to ask you too, because one thing in your digital companion I thought was so interesting. You mentioned the strategy, which my first thought, because this was my first thought when I saw that you could book 3, but it wasn't like Fast Pass Plus, because in that one, your whole idea was, let's do 3, let's get through all of them so we can get that 4th one, but you couldn't get it until the 3. So now it's different. So I'll let you explain it because you're the guest, but you have these ideas of like time savers and burners. So you're getting 3 in advance, but it's not like Fast Pass Plus. So I'm curious if you could explain how that's different, but also then what you should do.
Yes, I will gladly do that. So yeah, in the era of FastPass Plus, which a lot of people are comparing MultiPass to, other than, it was free back then, you
Yes.
got 3 advanced selections, and you had to use all 3 of them before you could go make a 4th one. And so people's strategy was to try to squeeze all of them as early as they could, and then start playing the game throughout the day. With MultiPass, though, you still make your 3 in advance, but as soon as you use one, you get one. And so it really behooves you to have at least one that's really early, but the other 2 you can kind of play with. The other thing, like FastPass Plus, there are tiers now at every park other than Animal Kingdom. So Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, Epcot, you get 1 Tier 1 advanced selection and 2 Tier 2 advanced selections. But once you're in the park and you unlock new ones, the tiers don't matter anymore. And shocker, you're going to save the most time at all the Tier 1 attractions. So really the best strategy for MultiPass is getting something you can use as early in the day as possible to then try to unlock more Tier 1 attractions. And so typically that means you'll want to book one burner, I'm using air quotes, that is something that has a very early return time that really isn't going to save you much time, but it's going to let you book more Tier 1 attractions instead of waiting around to use. So you want to book the Tier 1 attraction that you want to ride that's going to save you the most time. There are almost no bad Tier 1 choices. There are a couple exceptions to that. Soarin' should not be a Tier 1, right? But you almost can't go wrong with a Tier 1 selection. For your Tier 2 selections, you want one to be a good time saver, and the other one you just want to book as early as possible. Now, there are still some caveats to that. Like if you're in Magic Kingdom and your early entry strategy is to do Tomorrowland, then your burner probably shouldn't be It's a Small World, because you're going to have to hike over to it, and then that's inefficient, right? So it's finding something close by where you'll be in the morning that's kind of a quick attraction where you can just use that lightning lane and unlock another one. So you want those time savers, but then you want that burner so you can start picking up more Tier 1 reservations. That's the key to MultiPass.
And I think Epcot is a good example, partially because, like you said, Soarin's there, but Test Track is not there. So it makes it like you just want to get Frozen and Remy's is what you want to do. Or, I mean, assuming you're not rope dropping or trying to get early. So, I mean, is distance really the key? Because to me, I look at it, I have not used this in practice yet.
Yeah.
I just want to pick Space for Birth because I'm like, it's right there. But I don't know, is there more to it than just automatically picking the thing near the gate? Or like Hollywood Studios, Star Tours seems right, but that's not near the gate. So I don't know. It's kind of a tricky one.
It is a tricky one. I think the best combination is it's a combination of 3 factors. Early return time, which is automatically going to factor out a lot of things. Quick experience, because you're doing this early in the day. You don't want to be, let's say this filters out It's a Small World again, because you don't want to be sitting on a boat for a long time while you could be in other lines getting through them quickly before the crowd's built up. So early return time, quick experience, and somewhat proximate to whatever you're going to be doing that morning, whether it's before or after, because lightning lane return times don't start until the park actually opens. So if you're there for early entry, you want to pick something that's going to be close to whatever you're doing during early entry. If you're skipping early entry, then something close to the entrance of the park so you can get in, use it, and then start unlocking Tier 1s. So it's a little bit of an art, a little bit of a science to figure out the right thing to do. Yeah.
I love like something like Seas with Nemo and Friends at Epcot seems like a good one because it's not that far away, but it's also not living with the land. It's not 15 minutes long or something.
Right. So, or if Epcot's just the hardest one for using MultiPass right now because Test Track is closed, and everyone's either booking Remy or Frozen, and so they book up and then good luck getting them the rest of the day. But if you do early entry from International Gateway, you knock Remy out, you have a pass for Frozen, but so you're already right there. Then Figment's a really good choice if you can stand the skunk smell, because it's the closest to the World Showcase, right? So you can get right there and then do whatever else you're going to do for the rest of the morning. But it's all about that, like, what were you going to be doing anyway? Don't let this like totally throw off your strategy for the day. It's a help. It shouldn't determine exactly what you do for the day.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, now my brain is just like going, because I haven't had to do this yet. Like I said, I hit a really weird spring break week that wasn't crowded. So I was just like, this is so easy. I like Genie Plus now, where before I was
Right.
annoyed. But now I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know. But personally, lately, I have found I've gone, I mean, back with FastPass Plus, same deal. I started staying on site more, partially because of the 60 plus
Oh, yeah.
window. And now I feel like it might even be more important based on how things are. So, what are you seeing with like, for example, like I feel like if you're on site, you're still going to have pretty good luck with your advanced bookings. But when you're
Yeah.
off site, are people able? Have they been able to do like? Are they getting stuck with Soarin' at Epcot? I promise I won't just stick at Epcot or whatever
Yeah.
the low end tier one is. They're not able to get something like Slinky Dog or something that, or
Right.
Tiana's for that matter, that they're not able to get.
So Tiana's is the best example. Almost never will on-site guests get to book it in advance. It is booking up before that 3-day window. And especially as we move into the more crowded fall, this debuted in the middle of summer on purpose, right? When there was going to be less demand for it and Disney could kind of work out all the bugs. But as we get, no one staying off site is going to be able to book Tiana in advance. The good news is that Tiana has regular drops during the day. That's funny because it is big drop. But 45 minutes after every hour, Disney tends to refresh Tiana's availability. So you can go pick it up during the day. And that's like, this is a whole new thing people have to learn is when these drops are happening so that they can take advantage of it. Slinky is another good example. It's not always booked up by the 3 days in advance, but it's pretty close. And in this new world of tiers, the really good tier 2 attractions tend to book up around or before that 3-day window too. So especially Tower of Terror and Toy Story Mania, those are frequently booked up. So it's very advantageous to on-site guests that want to book these, and off-site guests are going to have to get a little trickier. The big deals, it hurts you at Epcot because everyone's just splitting between Remy and Frozen. And so you kind of just have to hope that you get one or the other. And if you're an off-site guest, you'll probably have a very late return time for whichever one you get. And at Hollywood Studios, because the tier 2s are booked up. And so your tier 2 options at that point are shows or swirling saucers or Star Tours. And so why, right? So it's tricky if you're an offsite guest, and it's going to be all about maximizing your same day reservation getting at that point.
You mentioned drops, and I admit that I knew they kind of did this. I remember trying to book like an individual lightning lane at 7, and all of a sudden they were at 7:30 and they were back. But it was interesting in the digital edition that you added where it was very specific, like you said, at 45 minutes. Is this a new thing, or is this something that you just are, that you guys at Touring Plans have just been able to really figure out what they're doing?
It's not incredibly new. Like this happened with Genie Plus too, but it wasn't as big of a deal because things weren't selling out for the day in advance. And so it didn't really matter if you knew when these drops were happening or not, unless it was Slinky, which did book up early or whatever. Now that things are booking up even before the day starts, it's more important to know when you could pick up these dropped reservations. And so Tiana's is the best example. I use this as an example because I specifically will not book Tiana's as an advanced selection because I don't need to, because I know I can pick it up during the day. So I'm going to use my advanced selection at Peter Pan's Flight that doesn't have regular drops, or Space Mountain that goes down regularly. And if it's down, they're not going to release more reservations, right? And so I try to outsmart the system by taking advantage of the drops. And Touring Plans, yes, does a lot of research about this. If you're just an average person wanting to figure these out for yourselves, I think the best visualization of it is actually at Thrill Data. So it's thrill-data.com. And you can navigate to any attraction, and they have little graphs of Lightning Lane availability. And it's just the best way to quickly look at something and see, oh, all of a sudden there's more availability at 45 minutes past every hour, or in Remy's case at 1:45 and 3:45, I think. But you can go and figure these things out for yourself so that then during the day, if you couldn't get Remy in advance, just set an alarm on your phone for 1:45 and go try to book it then. And that way you can game the system a little bit more than you needed to when it was Genie Plus.
I feel like I want to cut this part out of the podcast just so people don't know about it. Like, I just want fewer people to not know. I'm
Only
just gonna,
you and me know.
yeah, just so I know. But no, seriously, I'm sure it's still a very small percentage, especially given a lot of people that are offsite or maybe even day guests that are just going to come in and be like, what are we doing?
No.
So
Yeah.
they're not going to know about the drops.
It's so sad when I'm in the parks and, I'll see moms with kids and they'll be like, well, we can go get a Frozen sing along or Indiana Jones stunt show. And I'm like, oh no, don't like, sure, both those things are great, but that's not what you should be using the pass on. But that's all that's available to them right at that very minute. Right. And you're just like, oh, but just wait. It's going to come back up. Right. One of my favorite new tools that I recommend to everyone just because I love using it is Standby Skipper. It's very low cost. I will let people research it on their own because I don't want to like hawk it or advertise it. But it takes advantage of those drops and cancellations for you. And so that you don't have to know the drop schedule and you don't have to constantly refresh to try to find a cancellation of Slinky Dog Dash and jump on it or whatever. And it'll just book them for you. And it has made every frustration I have with multipass, which are many, it solves them all. And so any day, if I'm buying multipass anyway, it's such a small amount of money on top of that's where I'm going just for my own peace of mind.
Oh yeah, I used that. I kind of was like skeptical, but I used it in March not with this, but with Genie Plus for the 7 a.m. And I was like, and I got Slinky Dog. It was like 9:05, and I was like,
yes.
But even during the day, I did this where I got like Frozen and Remy's and things where I mean, they said they were only available really late or weren't, and then it just grabbed them, and I was like, thank you.
Right.
Very much.
Yes.
So
someone moves their own or someone, and I'm a control freak, which should surprise no one. Like I wrote the book and I know the data. And so I was hesitant to give up control and the results speak for themselves. Yeah. Like I used it. I think the very first time I used it was with Genie Plus and it was with my big kid in Hollywood Studios. And like it got us every major attraction when they were all sold out. Right. And you can't beat that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I promise for the listeners, neither one of us is getting extra money for mentioning this, but it was really good. I know I talked about it when I did my trip report, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you about Tiana's a little more because I found it interesting. I was happy when Genie Plus, when they brought it out, and I thought they were going to make it virtual queue, but individual lightning lane, but they put it as part of Genie Plus and now as this. But I thought they were going to then switch it out and have Seven Dwarfs or something or do something different, but they didn't. So I'm curious, because Jungle Cruise used to always be the one and everything. And I know it's different with advanced bookings, but how, like, I know Tiana's had downtime too, but what's kind of been the story with Tiana's as beyond just what we just talked about with drops, but in terms of how it's impacted maybe other parts of the park too?
Yeah. Interestingly, I think Tron moving to standby impacts strategy for Magic Kingdom more than Tiana. But I will say Tiana being part of MultiPass, Genie Plus and not individual Lightning Lane got announced when the book was locked, but before it had gone to print. And I will gladly admit that I had written all the strategies and recommendations based on the assumption that it would be individual Lightning Lane. Oh. That was written in there. And we were like, nope, we got to pull that back. And we did. And we edited it to make it all make sense. So it was shocking. I think retrospectively, it makes sense for Disney because they know everyone's going to try to buy MultiPass now to try to get Tiana. But it does impact your sort of approach to your day as well. It makes a day really expensive if you buy MultiPass and Seven Dwarfs and Tron. It made it really, really difficult when Tron and Tiana were both virtual queue because you could only join one. And then the one you couldn't join, you had to buy, but you had to buy it in advance. Like it made no sense and was incredibly difficult. I think the good news is that Tiana, I'm going to knock on all the wood here, is remarkably more reliable than it was during the summer. It was averaging 30% downtime every day during the summer. And you just can't plan around that. Your whole day had to be flexible in hopes that it was going to come up and you could rush over there before it went down again. Right. I had 2 summer trips and I wasn't successful in riding it in either trip. And I know all the tricks, right? I it was just down all the time. It was incredibly frustrating. But now I think it's pretty easy. If you can get a multi-pass, anytime you can get a multi-pass, go for it. Or you're joining the virtual queue and you're going to enter the line when you can. The wait times are the lowest first thing in the morning. And then they balloon pretty quickly. But otherwise, you're just going to work it in to what you were doing anyway. It's not open during early entry, so you can still have a strategy for that. And you just go to Tiana when you want to do Tiana now that it's up. I suspect it will be converting to standby. I could be wrong because Cosmic Rewind's still on virtual queue.
I don't understand that. I thought that would go before Tron, but
it
no.
should. But it was only because they only got rid of Trons because they got so much negative feedback about having 2 virtual queues. Right. And when they made that call, Tiana's was still unreliable. So they had to keep the virtual queue on Tiana. But now it's not and we're moving into a cooler season. So there's not going to be as much demand for Tiana. So I could see them converting it to standby. We'll see though. Disney likes tricking us at every turn. If it converts to standby, then you're going to have some interesting park strategy because you will want to get there early in the day before things get really crazy. And so then how does that impact what you do during early entry, etc. But for now, you write it when you can.
Yeah, that's going to be, it's a whole different set of possible issues. But speaking of Tron, the thought with something that's that popular is that it's going to have this giant standby wait, but Tron is not a ride that everyone's going to do. So I'm curious, like how long, I mean, have we seen like an hour or 90 minutes? It probably varies, but has it been a little more manageable than you might have thought?
So we're in this weird zone with Tron. Tron converted to standby and then like 2 hurricanes came through.
Right.
And it's party season. And so if you try it on a party day versus a non-party day, it's very different experiences. So we're not going to figure out the reality of Tron's waits until party season is over. That's just the real truth. But on non-party days, because on party days, the park is open fewer hours, so very few people go. So you have really low crowds on party days at Magic Kingdom. On non-party days, you have huge crowds because everyone's going to try to go on the day that it's open later. On those non-party days, we've seen posted waits of 3 hours, 2.5 hours in the middle of the day for Tron, and this isn't even the most crowded time of year. Now, I will also say comparing posted wait times to actual wait times, the posted wait times are really inflated for Tron right now. So it's posted at 2.5 or 3 hours, but you're not waiting that long. You might be waiting 2/3 of that, which is still a really long time, but not that long. But on those party days, it's more in the 60 to 90 minute range. It's still higher than Seven Dwarfs or anything else in the park. It is easily the highest wait time in the park. And since it's opened, its posted wait times have been higher than any other attraction at Walt Disney World, higher than Slinky, higher than Flight of Passage. So it is tricky. It's currently not open during early entry. I expect it to get added to early entry. I think that's a staffing thing and an operations thing more than anything else. So you have to be able to plan because people are lining up for it during early entry. So do you wait in that line and waste your early entry time? Do you say, I'm going to get in line when the park opens and there will be people in front of me and it'll be okay? I think that's the best move right now. If you have early entry, try to do Space Mountain and then get in line for Tron. If you have regular entry, go straight to Tron. And then the wait times do balloon pretty quickly and they don't go down as much at night because it is so much cooler at night. And so people are waiting to ride at night. And so that's not as good of a strategy as it is at other headliners just waiting. So we'll see once all of these weird variables like hurricanes and parties stop happening, if there's other dips or strategies to use with Tron. But right now it's getting there as early as you can.
You know what's really sad is you were going through like, you could do this, you could this. And in my head, Disney has trained me. In my head, I thought, yeah, I'm just going to buy out.
Yeah, or you could just buy it.
And that's sad. That's they got me. That's what I do. Cause I'm just like, Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe it's
that's too
solo,
much.
but not with like family and stuff. It's like, oh no, we're not
No,
gonna mess with
right.
that. Which is sad
Uh,
because it's even more expensive then.
It is
But
sad. It is sad. I
well, that's
agree.
interesting though, because if Tiana's goes standby though, then that's probably the thing that would impact Tron standby the biggest, right? Is if that
Yes.
also goes standby, then it's like you've got the old school. I mean, I'm thinking years and years ago, you would run to Big Thunder and Splash or to Space Mountain before Seven Dwarfs. It's that idea. It's like you're
It
running to
is.
two ends, or Remy's and Frozen idea, but that's different because of the
Yes.
International Gateway. But that same idea, run one end to the other.
Yes. And that's what Disney tries to do, right? They're trying to spread out crowds immediately. So at Magic Kingdom, you have the left pole, the right pole, and now the top pole with Seven Dwarves. Hollywood Studios, you had Slinky and Tower, and now you've got Rise, Slinky, Tower, so far apart, right? And they're trying to do that on purpose. It makes having an efficient morning more difficult, but it does sort of spread people out. Magic Kingdom's early entry has been essentially broken for a long time because 90% of people were going to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and that's not what Disney wants.
No.
That just crushes operations right first thing in the day. And so they're trying to start getting back to this healthy spot, but then it drives people like us crazy because there's no one right answer.
Right.
Yeah, it's all trade-offs.
Well, I have to ask you, this is the perfect time to ask you about downtime because you already mentioned that a bit earlier with Tiana's because when I went, I mean, used to you run into it all the time with Rise of the Resistance, but where it got me was the Magic Kingdom, where when I went, like I showed up and it was like Space Mountain's always down. Space Mountain, Pirates, and I forget what else. There was like 4 things down, and I was like, it was right. It wasn't early entry, but it was right at entry, and like everything had long waits, like random stuff, like the Speedway and all this stuff. And I was like, "What is happening?" And then you look and you're like, "Oh, Big Thunder was down too." So it was like down, down, and that was when Tiana's wasn't open. And Disneyland was even worse. But has it gotten better? You mentioned Tiana's has gotten better. Remy seems like it's gotten better.
Yes, Rise of the Resistance has gotten much better. Again, knock on all the wood. Now, part of it is because they've turned some of the elements onto B mode indefinitely, right? Like the cannons don't move anymore, and that was a big reason it was down regular. So they've made some trade-offs, but it's much more reliable. You're right, Magic Kingdom is the park with the most problems, and it will continue to be, which is weird because Magic Kingdom has the most options. It has the most rides, but a lot of them are very unreliable because they haven't gotten the maintenance and the upkeep and the refurbishments they need. Now we're seeing some of that investment come back. Peter Pan was down this summer for refurb. Jungle Cruise came back last week from its refurb. Big Thunder is going to go down for a year, which is going to be painful.
Yes.
But eventually helpful. Rock and Roller Coaster, not at Magic Kingdom, but was another huge downtime struggle. And it had a lengthy refurb and still had huge downtime struggles, but then it had a second lengthy refurb and now seems to be doing better. It still has some problems. Tower of Terror, similar, had a lot of problems. They did some stealthy refurbs on it where they were shutting down one elevator or the other. So now we're to a point where Magic Kingdom, the classics, you called them out, Space Mountain, Pirates are the top 2. People Mover has a lot of downtime, doesn't have as many fans. I don't know why. It's those. Journey of the Little Mermaid actually has had quite a bit of downtime. So it's those that are impacting things more now that Tiana's back to being reliable and Rise is being reliable. It's that sort of headliners, but not super headliners. And so it's not as big of a problem, but it impacts wait times a lot.
Well, especially something like Pirates that just holds so many people.
It's like, a people eater. Yeah.
2,500 people or whatever.
Last week it had 26% downtime. So a 1 in 4 chance that it was down every day of the week, right? And that's a problem. That doesn't work.
Well, this is sad because I'm feeling a little down about all this. And now I'm going to ask you about the Premier Pass idea. I mean, I should clarify, not the Premier Pass. That used to be the name years and years ago of like the annual pass for both coasts. But no, I forget what the exact name, but it is basically sort of like Universal Express that you would buy. But I'll just say, if you haven't heard, look it up. Very expensive, not as expensive as VIP Tour, but very expensive. But I'm curious, I don't know. I know that this is brand new, so I'm not expecting
Yeah.
you to have data because they haven't even, it's basically just getting brought out as a pilot program essentially at the end of this month and everything. You put up some interesting things about kind of comparing it to like a VIP tour. And also the big thing being you can only use each attraction once. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts on it because
Yeah.
the price I expected to be high, but some of the restrictions I was like, oh boy.
Right. Well, so you compared it to Universal Express Pass, which there are two tiers of Express Pass. There's the basic, which is like this one, like Disney's in the rules, that you can only use it once at each attraction. The big benefit is you don't have to make reservations, so you can go whenever you want, but it's only once at each attraction that offers a lightning lane. And then Universal has another tier called Unlimited. The problem I see is that Disney's is priced like unlimited,
Right.
but functions as the basic. And I think that's a problem. You mentioned the VIP tour. I'm looking at my math because, yeah, we don't have data on actually using it, but we have all the data about the pricing and what's included, etc. The lowest you'll pay for it is at Animal Kingdom on low crowd days. It's $129 per person for the day. And that's on top of your park ticket. Magic Kingdom, which is arguably the place that should be the most worthwhile, the least you'll pay for it is $329 per person. And it tops out at $449. And you'll easily see that price point during Thanksgiving and Christmas, for example. So yikes.
Yeah.
I think is the first, like, that's more than your park ticket. Personally, I would always buy a second Magic Kingdom park ticket day versus paying to just use each lightning lane one time. But I digress. If you compare it to a VIP tour, VIP tours are the elite Disney offering. They still sell out every day. So I actually expect Disney to raise the prices on them. That's another conversation for a different day. You get to skip the lines with VIP tours. You pay the same price, rather you have one person or 10 people. You get a tour guide. You get reserved seating for parades and fireworks. You get free snacks. Like it's an elite product and it is priced as such. But if we just look at the lowest prices, VIP tours start at $450 per hour, which sounds crazy and is crazy, and a minimum of 7 hours. But if you have 10 people, you're paying a little over $3,000 to get 7 hours of unlimited line skipping at any park you want. They'll drive you between them and snacks and a guide. If you buy the cheapest Magic Kingdom Premier Pass for those same 10 people, it's more expensive than the VIP tour. So in large groups, like this is the price point we're talking about. It is priced almost the same as the VIP tour. If you're a family of 4, no, it's not. But there is some comparison at that level. Where my brain breaks is the cost you're paying per ride. Because essentially what Premier Pass is, it's like a pre-packaged every multi-pass and single pass in the park. You get them all, you can use them all once, and you can only use them once, and you don't have to make reservations. But you're essentially locking yourself into paying for all of them. So if you look at the math for Animal Kingdom, for example, Animal Kingdom has 6 rides that offer lightning lanes. The rest are shows, and I'm not counting those because you're never going to save time by using one at a show. So even if you're paying the cheapest price, $129 per day, per person, and getting 6 rides, you're paying over $30 to skip every ride. So you're paying $30 to skip Dinosaur, you're paying $30 to skip Everest, you're paying $30 to skip Cali, you're paying $30 to skip Flight of Passage. And that might be okay for Flight of Passage, but if you look at Lightning Lane Single Pass, Flight of Passage doesn't even cost $30 by itself, right? And never ever is Dinosaur going to cost $30, and Dinosaur is going to close soon. And then right? Like financially, it doesn't make sense. And all of Disney is making it a product because they know there are people that will buy it because they have money.
Right.
I don't have that kind of money. Most people don't have that kind of money. So my recommendation is, if the price tag makes you go, ugh, it's not for you. Don't even make yourself stress out about it.
Right.
If you see the price tag and you're like, sure, add that in, then it's for you. Sure, go for it. But beyond that, don't try to make the math make sense, because it won't ever.
No, it's not it's not designed. I mean, you could say Genie Plus, I'm still somebody that will even buy it sometimes at Animal Kingdom when I know that it's not really a good value most days because you don't save that much time. But I will do it because I'm like, okay, especially when it's like $15 a person. I'm like, okay, it's
Yeah.
it's not flight pass, but it'll save me 30 minutes here, 20 minutes here, whatever. Okay, I'll do it because we don't go to the parks. We go to the parks
Yeah.
once a year. But I'm not going to pay $500 for four people. And that's like the low. That's
It's the low
that's
end.
actually below the
Yeah.
low end because it's not even 129. Can't do math on the fly, I guess. But like $600 or whatever for it's just not. And who knows? It's weird because it reminds me a little bit of the Star Cruiser where everyone said, well, the price is too high. They're going to drop it. I don't know if they will.
I don't
Maybe
think.
a little bit, but I don't know.
I think there's a market for it, and I think it will sell out. VIP tours sell out every day. If VIP tours sell out every day, this will sell out. So, I think
Yeah.
it's here to stay
The
at its
interesting thing,
price point.
like you said, what you brought up is it could have an impact. Well, you mentioned about how they're doing things
Mm,
differently. It could
yeah,
impact what's available in terms of reservations. And that's where I start to go, oh, it's not
right.
entirely because like certain VIP tours, I feel like don't, this is
No,
me, I could be wrong, don't have a huge impact on my day if other people go on a VIP tour. That's such a
right.
small percentage. This I feel like could, if it takes off, could really impact other people negatively.
Yes, exactly. And so that's why the optimist in me is saying they've been limiting Lightning Lane capacity all along because they knew this was coming. And
Mm.
so they've already built in that capacity. I don't know if that's actually true. And if tons of people start buying it and Disney prioritizes their time because they paid a ton of money, then yeah, the standby times are going to go up because they're going to get those people through the Lightning Lane fast.
Well, I'm going to hope that it doesn't take off. It's going to go down with like some of the other weird ideas they've had in the past.
Yeah.
Like they were going to have those little, this was years ago, those little like like those little
Yeah,
tents by Space
the
Mountain.
cabanas.
Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah.
I was trying to think of those kinds of things. Now, those obviously you looked at them and you went, well, that was stupid. But this one,
Right.
like you said, I feel like I don't know because I've even heard like Disney fans that I feel like probably don't have much more money than me are like, I've been waiting for this. This is great. And I'm like, you are crazy. So I
Yes.
don't know. I don't understand it.
I don't understand it either, but there are people that do.
I don't mean,
So,
I understand it from Disney's perspective. Don't get me
oh
wrong.
yeah,
I just don't
100%.
understand it from the
No,
I guess that even if they're doing well, is not doing like, so well where this is no money,
right.
I guess.
No, like $329 is a meal at Victoria and Albert's. I'll take that any day. Like there are so many things I can think of that I would spend that money on
Yeah, I would stay at a nicer
before.
resort like
Right.
easily. That
Yeah.
would, get you pretty far if you add it all up. Okay, well, I don't mean to bring us down too much. Of course, now we're going to talk about the dining plan. Oh gosh. But
Talk about money grabs.
no, here's the funny thing is what I really struck me in the book was you have this table where it's like
Yeah.
the percentage of various like, different types of the dining plan, the percentage you're going to like basically you're going to get more money's worth than you pay. And they're
Yeah.
all in like the single digits almost. So
Yes.
I am curious though, from what you've gathered, like what are some tips if people are like, I just don't want to worry about it. I'm going to get the dining plan. I'm not talking about somebody who's like going to go extreme and make their own spreadsheet, but what are some
Right.
tips like that can help you, at least if you don't get your money's worth, you're not like just getting destroyed by the
Yeah.
dining plan.
Yeah. Drink alcohol with every meal. That's the number one tip, which I hate saying, especially like if you go in the summer, you're just going to pass out in the middle of the day. But it is the only way to come ahead is to drink alcohol with every meal. And if you don't, good luck. Other than that, it's eating a lot of steak and like really good steak and seafood and maximizing those table service credits. It's also easier to quote unquote win with kids. The kids' dining plan prices are much more friendly and winnable than the adults. But anytime you should not get the dining plan if anyone in your party is between the ages of 10 and 20 because they're paying adult prices and they can't drink alcohol. So like done right there. You will not even come close. But if you're a party of all adults or 2 adults and 2 kids under the age of 9, if you can organize it so that you're doing a couple of 1 credit character meals, you're getting those drinks whenever you can. You're finding some nice fancy snacks. If you go during Epcot festival season, you're using those at festival booths, then you can come close. If you're using quick service plans, the best place to do that is the Polite Pig at Disney Springs. Almost anything that you order there will put you ahead. So that's a good one. Satuli Canteen is another good one to use it at. Also Docking Bay 7. So there are some places that you can go and figure out how to get ahead pretty reliably. But number 1 is drink yourself under the table.
Which makes sense because, like, I remember, last time I got like a beer, and granted, it was at Docking Bay 7, so it's more expensive. And it was like $15. And I was like,
right.
So if you're getting that for free, I guess that helps a lot.
That's how
Not for free. That's the false word.
You're prepaying for it. Yes.
So on a related note, I feel like, I have very picky eaters. And so, and also as things get more expensive, I have found one of the easy ways to cut down costs is not do as many sit down meals. But when I look at like ADRs and stuff, I feel like they seem so much easier than they were 5 or 10 years ago. But I don't know if it's just because I'm not as in the weeds, or, I mean, overall there are the outliers, but are we seeing that as prices continue to rise at Disney World, that people just are doing kind of what I'm doing and just not really messing with it?
100%. I think there's a couple things. Some of it is a little bit of recency bias. So you're talking 5-10 years ago. Immediately after the pandemic, dining reservations were incredibly difficult to get because staffing wasn't keeping up and capacity wasn't full capacity in restaurants. So we have that recency bias of like, every reservation is hard to get. And now they're not. But part of it, and we're seeing this in surveys, so unofficial guide readers, touring plans users fill out post-visit surveys. And we're hearing more and more often that Disney's getting more expensive and I'm still going, but my budget isn't changing. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm going to be paying for multi-pass, I'm not going to be paying for the fancy meals. I'm going to be packing my lunch in, or I'm going to be doing more quick service. I'm going to be finding the less expensive things. And so I think part of it is that we're starting to see that trade-off on a larger scale. We have the increased capacity, we have the lower demand, and not as many people are getting the dining plan. Free dining isn't as much of a thing. That very much drives reservations a lot of the time. So reservations are still incredibly easy to make. Another piece of this is we're not seeing as many new restaurants joining the lineup. That's when you have things that are really hard to get, like Be Our Guest in its glory days, or whatever the case may be. Now it's one of the easiest reservations. You can just walk right up.
Yes.
So now the only so even for most of the summer, you could walk up to any restaurant any day, any time of the day. It didn't matter. The only exception to that was Space 220, and especially Space 220 Lounge. You can get Space 220 restaurant reservations, not easily, but pretty readily if you just keep checking back. Space 220 Lounge is incredibly difficult, continues to be incredibly difficult, but pretty much anywhere else you want to eat at Disney, you're going to be able to eat. We'll see if that changes as we get into the holiday season, but it's not what it was 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, and that, you made a lot of good points there. Be Our Guest. I mean, I remember when I got it, my kids were young, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we get to go!" And then we went, and it was pretty great. And then we went again, and I was like,
"Wait, yeah."
And this was a la carte lunch. This was not all the fixed price stuff, which makes it just.
It's crazy. So I just went, I took my older kid who's 9 because its scores have been trending upward. It got some new menu items. They piloted bringing the Beast back for actual meet and greets instead of just walking around. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take her and I'm going to try. I hadn't been since it was a la carte because I saw the scores, right? I wasn't going to go, but I was like, okay, I'll give it another try. And no, it's just still not. And the Beast was back to just walking around instead of meeting and greeting. And no, it's not what it was. Not worth it.
That's too bad. Well,
Yeah.
I have a few fun questions for you. Before you get to that,
Great.
I did want to ask you quickly just a little more about kind of what's it been like to work on the book. I mean, beyond just the last minute updates and that, just kind of
Yeah.
your experience. Like, what's that been like for you?
So much fun. I am very adamant and very passionate about telling people that cast members are the people that make they are what make Disney Disney. They're what make vacations magical. And so getting to write the book has given me even more access to more cast members, and getting to hear their stories and what makes their jobs fun and how their parts of the job work. That has been personally very gratifying. And I love that. It's also been great. Like, I am a big Disney penny pincher. That is my style. We would always eat quick service, and never do any extras. And rent DVC points, which I still do to do my stays. But, writing a book is a good excuse to say, well, now I have to experience the more expensive things. It also keeps us from getting stale. Like, I have my favorite resorts. I would
Right.
stay the Animal Kingdom Lodge every time if I could.
Yeah, me too.
But I need to. So, like, this year we've stayed at Pop Century and Fort Wilderness and Boardwalk and Caribbean Beach and All Star Sports. And so, like, I get to experience these different things that my normal personality of just staying with what I know wouldn't get to experience. And that's really cool. And it's just a lot of fun to help people out. Book is a totally different medium, and to go pick it up in a library or to have high school friends reach out and be like, hey, I got this book to help me plan my trip with my kids, and like, you wrote it. It's fun. I don't know. It's different. It's stressful because you can't change it and then you feel
Right.
inadequate, but I like a challenge. So that's been great.
Well, awesome. Well, I'd like to. I would still enjoy the book, even though I know most of the info is online. I've had my fair share of unofficial guides over the years, going back to the like 1998 or something crazy.
I know people on the podcast can't see this, but when I got the co-author deal, my friend Bob Jacobs, who lives up in Wisconsin, sent me his first edition
Oh,
of the
wow.
Unofficial Guide, which came out in 1984, which incidentally is before I was born. But yeah, there have been a lot of them.
I didn't realize they went back
cool.
that far, because I
Yeah.
think 98 I had, because I remember I was like, I remember we were going that year and it was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is giving us all the tips we didn't know, because that was pre-paper fast pass and everything else.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
crazy. That 1984. Wow.
84. There you go.
But
And then the
different.
next edition I really enjoy, the 1985, because Bob gave me that one as well. Here, I'll grab it. And it's the Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World and Epcot, because
Oh.
Epcot, I guess, is not a part of Walt Disney World.
That's funny too that was 85, because Epcot opened in
Yeah.
82. So it's like,
Right.
but I guess they needed to make it clear, because, well, when I was young and growing up, people would say, oh, I went to Disney World and I also went to Epcot. That was a normal
Right.
thing people used to say. So,
Yeah.
they may probably still do now. Actually, they
Yeah.
probably still say that.
They probably do. Yeah.
That's really cool. I like that. I wish people,
Yeah.
wish people could see that on video, but that's really
No,
fun.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
I can send you pictures of them. You could
Yes,
post them
you
if
should.
want. Yeah.
That would be
Okay.
great. But it's
I'll do that.
it's good for me. That's what's really important here. So,
Yes.
all right. Well, let's finish with some fun questions just about things you like at the parks. I promise these are not meant to stump you. They are just being silly mostly, or just different things that are not about how Disney is costing so much money. Because we got to finish on a sillier
Gotta
note.
finish on a positive. Yeah.
So
We
very
still love
simple.
Disney.
Which one of these do you like the best?
Okay.
Paper Fast Pass, Fast Pass Plus, Genie Plus, or Lightning Lane Multi-Pass? So we're not including the Premier Pass. That's not one of them. Which of those
I'm
four?
including that. I gotta go for free. I really miss paper fast passes. I thrived during that era, mostly because I was a kid with endless energy. I loved running across the park and getting paper fast passes for my whole family and bringing them back. Those were the glory days. Forever.
Yeah, I love
I even
doing
have,
that,
this
even
will
as
be
an
another
adult.
one that won't work, but I have a paper fast pass tumbler.
That's
That's all.
awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, so here's a question about character dining, which I'm sure you've done your share of. Is it a great time or an overpriced time waster? What would you say
That
about
de-
character dining?
that depends on which meal you choose. I say, just as a general rule, if you're limited on time in the parks, especially, and you don't want to spend time in character lines, character meals, especially resort character meals, are a great way to get more of that character time. And those resort ones mean you don't have to pay for a park ticket to enjoy it. So if you choose wisely, they can save you time and even some money. If you choose unwisely, they can use up a lot of your park time and be incredibly expensive for not great food. So a couple of my favorites, one that's really hard to get to logistically, it's only offered 2 days a week and it's not on Disney's transportation system. Goofy's breakfast at Ravello, which is at the Four Seasons Resort, is the top character meal from a food and a character perspective. My kids got 20 minutes each alone with Mickey and Minnie and Goofy, and we had the meal of our lives. Four Seasons Resort is on Disney property. It's like lodged in between Magic Kingdom and Fort Wilderness, essentially. And you can Uber there. Highly recommend it. If you don't want to deal with that or the days of the week don't work out for you, for dinner, storybook dining is great from a food perspective. It's only Snow White characters, so if that's not your jam, that's fine. Breakfast at the Riviera Resort at Topolino's, also a good option. In the parks, Garden Grill is a top rated one. At Epcot, you get to see Chip and Dale. The food is family style. Tusker House in Animal Kingdom can be great. It can also be really crowded. So that one's up for a little bit of how you time it and what time of year it is. So it comes down to what you choose and how you want to spend your time. That was a very long one.
I really love how I asked kind of a silly question and you gave a great answer.
I'm very passionate about that.
I didn't even know. I wasn't asking that because I thought, well, I figured you'd done some with having young kids, but man, that was a good answer. So
yes.
Okay. Well, here's a quick. You mentioned that you've stayed at a lot of more resorts lately. So now that you've done that, what is like one that you really loved that you think does not get enough credit?
Well, you could put Animal Kingdom Lodge in that category,
yes,
right? And I know
I'm right
it's my
with you
favorite.
on that.
Yeah, doesn't get enough credit. People claim it's way out of the way and transportation sucks. Whatever. Like you can drive to any park in 12 minutes or less.
Yeah, they're being ridiculous.
It's fine. You have giraffes outside your window. So, okay. But I say that all the time. So I will force myself to come up with another one. Like my sleeper hit in the era of Skyliner is Caribbean Beach. It's very dependent on where in Caribbean Beach you end up. So it's important to make a room request. But you can walk to Riviera and have access to all of the excellent dining locations there. You can Skyliner to Hollywood Studios and Epcot. The rooms are not that great unless you get a very recently refurbished one. It is very spread out, so you can get a terrible location. So it can be hit or miss, but in the era of the Skyliner, I think it's underrated for what it can be. I'll say it that way.
Well, cool. No, that was good. I like that. All right. So virtual queues, are they a good way to save time or just way too complicated?
Way too complicated. Disney instituted virtual queues to compensate for unreliable attractions. That was what they were made to do. And now they've just started using them to throttle demand, and that's rude.
I'm really curious when they have those years, in theory, I mean, assuming in the future, like your 2028 or whatever, when they're opening all these different things, like, are they just going to all have virtual queues? Like, how are they going to do this? I don't understand.
It'll be interesting. So this is just a wild hypothesis. If you look to the Tokyo parks where crowding is much more of an issue, and they have more recent history of opening huge lands all at one time, like Fantasy Springs, they essentially, like, you have to have a ticket to even get in the land, and then you have timed reservations for the rides within that land as part of a package. I halfway suspect that Disney may implement something like that. We saw something similar in Pandora when it first opened. You didn't have reservations, but you had to wait to get into the land, and then you got to wait in the lines. I think it'll be something similar to that when we see big new things open.
Not looking forward to that at all. I just
no,
gotta
me
say.
either.
And I'm excited about some of the new things. All right. Well, a couple more questions, then we will finish.
Yeah.
Hottest place in Walt Disney World, Toy Story Land or the outside area of Communicore Hall? Which is the hottest place in Walt Disney World? Or all of Animal Kingdom, but that's too easy, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say Animal Kingdom because of the humidity. No, Toy Story Land mostly because they're both pavement and no shade. But Toy Story Land's always more crowded, so you've got like all the sweaty people on top of it.
Not a comfortable place to be in, I gotta say.
Never.
That's why the reservations, it's like in, okay, go on the ride, leave. That's my Toy Story Land approach.
Hollywood Studios is my least visited park, my family's least visited park, just because, it's hard.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a good time last time, but it was less crowded. But generally, just not always
difficult and hot.
Yeah. Okay. Last question.
Yeah.
Disney announced many, many things at D23. Assuming they're all getting built, I'm not going to get into that. But what are you excited about? You can name a couple or one, or like which of these are you like? Yeah, this sounds cool.
Yeah, I think generally I'm excited that investment in the parks is becoming a big thing again. It's been a while.
Yes.
It's been a while. Even pre-pandemic, it had been a while. So that I'm excited about. I'll pick two. Number one, Magic Kingdom Nighttime Parade. It has been too long since there has been that. My clearest memory from my childhood visits to Walt Disney World was sitting with my family and watching the nighttime parades. And like, I need to do with that with my kids, and I've never been able to do that with my kids. So easily, Magic Kingdom has been missing those vibes. I'm so glad it's going to be back. Then beyond that, really excited for the revitalization of Animal Kingdom and Dino Land. We rarely spend time in Dino Land anyway, other than Triceratops Spin is one of my 6-year-old's favorites. So oops. But I think Encanto was made for Animal Kingdom. I think it can be done well. I'm generally not a fan of IP making its way into the parks, but I think that ship has sailed. That's just what's going to happen in the theme parks from now on. If it's things like Encanto or Indiana Jones that can match the feel of the park anyway and add to it rather than subtract from it, I think that has the potential to be a very cool area if done right. And I'm crossing my fingers that it is done right.
Yeah, and especially with Encanto. I mean, Indiana Jones, I love at Disneyland, but I do like Dinosaur, but especially Encanto, replacing a coaster that's no longer there, a bunch of carnival games. I'm sorry, Triceratops Spin, I understand. But
I
replacing
don't,
that area, it's always so hot. They don't have a shade. Oh my gosh. No, but that's
terrible. Now,
replacing that area
needs to
is
stay,
good.
But that's okay. Yeah, maybe they'll figure out a way to keep that.
Yeah, that's a fun area, especially for younger kids. I mean, it's hot too, but it's the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think though, I was forgetting about the Boneyard. I apologize, but I was thinking more about the former Primeval World and Triceratops Spin and those carnival games. I'm like, just take that out. That's
even take that space back.
Yeah. Just put something else on there. Well, cool. Well, Becky, this has been really fun. If listeners want to, I know that you put up a lot, you used to do more videos, but now you're doing a lot on Instagram that is really good. But if listeners want to follow you or learn more about the book or touring plans, where should they go?
Sure. Touringplans.com. You can find the blog there. I tend to blog on Wednesdays is my weekly slot, and I'll do a couple others as well. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm at Raising Mini-Me's, all one word, and mini as in Minnie Mouse. And so I post there every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday and have lots of stories and lots of database posts. Plus I love answering people's questions. Message me there anytime. Happy to do it. Haven't been on YouTube in a while just because life is busy. I gotta I'm writing a 600-page book and raising 2 kids and working a full-time job. So something had to drop. But yeah, Instagram is where you'll reach me most of the time, but you can find me on the Touring Plans blog as well.
Well, no, and I wasn't trying. I wasn't trying to speak badly about it not being on YouTube.
Oh no, you're fine.
Because I feel like your approach you were taking there, you're doing on Instagram much more frequently, which is great. So
yes,
no, it's really good and really helpful, especially with Disney making so many changes. But this has been really fun. Thank you so much for talking with me. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was great to talk with Becky once again. If you'd like to check out her past appearance or any other episodes of Tomorrow Society Podcast, go to tomorrowsociety.com/podcasts or just scroll back on your Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, whatever. And of course, check out what Touring Plans is doing and the unofficial guide. I know that this information is out there online, but they definitely bring a little bit of a different spin to it. And I've always enjoyed whenever I'm getting ready for a new trip, I always make sure and go, oh, I need to check out the Touring Plans membership again and get all that set up. Also like their Lines app a lot. That's a fun way to keep track of everything that's going on. So that's about all I've got for you. I did want to mention that for episode 250, I would love to talk about any questions you have or any theme park topics. It's going to be kind of freewheeling. Would love to address if there's something you're like, I never heard Dan's thoughts on X or Y. Not X, Twitter. No, not that. Don't have any thoughts there. But, definitely submit them. Send me an email, dan@tomorrowsociety.com. I would love to make it a fun look at what's happening with the parks. If you have a question about the podcast, about me or anything, almost nothing is off limits. So definitely let me know. I'd love to have you participate in the final episode. Before that, though, we still have 4 more after this one before the final episode, so more fun interviews to come. And also, I have consolidated a lot of my social media, so if you went to find Tomorrow Society, you're like, well, where did it go? It's gone. They're done. Go to The Dan Heaton is where you want to follow me in the future, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. Blue Sky even, because I know a lot of you are going there, but probably not as much theme park content, but still, obviously, we'll talk about what's going on with the parks and a lot of other topics if you're cool with that. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bittersweet to be doing really fun episodes and then just, we're getting close to the end, but I think it's the right time, and I like the idea of finishing on a nice, cool number like 250. As always, thanks for listening to the show for the past 9 years and providing such great support. It means a lot, and I will talk to you again next time.